Welcome to the first OAUTH interim meeting. So this is the not well. Make sure you understand what this means. This applies here too. So quick update. So that the JOT response for token introspection document, this is the document that we pulled back to the working group, and we had to get feedback from the working group on the recent changes because of IESG feedback. So we've done that. It seems that the work group is okay with the changes, and we are we sent it back to the IESG. So I think we're good with this. So that's one. The second one is OAUTH 2.1 is now a working group document. We went through adoption process for 2 weeks and lots of support for the document, no objections. So it's a new work group document right now. The job profile for access token is waiting for the shipper write-up. So it's Hannes should be working on this soon. And the JAR document was updated recently to address some IESG concerns that was raised during IESG review. We hope that this addresses that current discussion and will allow us to move this. It's been hanging in there for some time. Any questions about that? Go ahead.
So Rafa, this is Roman. If I could jump in on the IESG documents, would that be okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so just with regards to the first one, yes, that's in my queue. I'm going to squint at it quickly. I expect that to go relatively easily, given that we've been through this once before, and I'll bring it back to the IESG. As to the last document, that's on next week's telechat.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. Thanks for the update, Roman. Appreciate it. Any question about those? Okay. Let's move on then. So today we'll be talking about OAUTH 2.1. Next week we'll be talking about PAR. Now we still have a bunch of other working group documents, and I was wondering if people have made some progress on those documents, and we need to discuss those. So any of the authors of these documents want to present any of those documents, let me know, and we will schedule meetings for those. Anybody would like that? Any one of the authors would like to present any of those documents? Okay.
So, hi, this is Justin. There's been some discussion on clarifications to RAR, and those have not yet been sort of fully folded into the document yet. There's a pull request with some discussion on it. I think it might be a good idea to have an update on RAR in a bit. I don't see Torsten on the call today, so I definitely would want to coordinate with him. But yeah, I think we should do one on RAR in the future.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Anybody else? So,
yeah, this is Aaron.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
So we had a lot of good discussions about the browser-based apps draft during the security workshop a couple weeks ago. So I'm not quite ready to do an update on that here, but probably soon.
Okay.
Yes, I can give a summary of those discussions and sort of where we're at with those.
Yeah, and the goal is just to schedule a few interim meetings to discuss those, right? I'm not talking about providing any feedback right now, right? So that's the point. Was there any progress with Depop? Anything there? Okay. And security topics, I don't see Torsten here. Okay, that's fine. I'll contact people offline and see what's going on there with those topics. Okay. That's all I have from my side. Go ahead. Somebody wants to jump in? Okay. So that's all I have on my side. I'll hand it to Aaron, and we'll talk about 2.1. Go ahead, Aaron.
All right. So yeah, I just want to give an update on where we're at with OAuth 2.1 and talk about, I guess, next steps. So this was recently adopted, I think last week. So it is now a working group document, and we're back to version 0.0. There were no actual changes between the last document that everybody saw and this version. So there's no, don't worry if you haven't actually read this version yet, because it's not any different than the last individual draft. So if you're not familiar with the document though at all, the idea in OAuth 2.1 is to consolidate the sort of best practices and current state of the art of OAuth 2 and roll those up into a new document, updating the core RFC. Doing things like capturing the best practices, as is documented in a handful of other drafts that have been published since the original RFC, as well as now in the original OAuth 2 RFC, there were a lot of things that were left undefined or future extension points that now do have extensions at various levels of stability. So it's worth now referencing those when appropriate so that they are now discoverable from the core. This is mainly, again, an effort to sort of update the core document. This is not meant to be a new thing. This is not supposed to be new functionality. So rather than trying to shove in every new feature that everybody can think of, we're trying to really just treat it as updating from the original 6749 to playing all the documents in order that have been written since then that are RFCs and consolidating that into a new document. Really just giving people a better starting point for when they start to read about OAuth. They're not starting with 10-year-old out-of-date information and trying to catch up. They can now start from a much more up-to-date modern place. So the summary of what's in the document, it's essentially a consolidation of whoever is making a lot of noise, can you please mute? I'm not sure who that is. I can't see. Someone's making breathing noises in dishes. Thanks. So OAuth 2.1 is consolidating 6749, the core, the native apps best current practice, rolling in Pixie support as well. There's a placeholder for the browser-based apps best current practice because that's not yet an RFC, but it will eventually roll that in as well. And the security best current practice as well is rolled up into there, and bearer tokens as well. So the idea is that this is sort of what most people would look at and say, yes, this is the current best way to do OAuth 2. So if you look at all those documents, what that means is the authorization code flow is the only redirect-based flow, and it includes the Pixie mechanism by default. There is, however, one exception carved out for specifically clients that are OpenID Connect clients that are using the nonce to prevent authorization code injection. There is a carve out for that just so that this draft does not break, quote unquote, break OpenID Connect clients. However, it is still highly recommended that Pixie is used because it is a safer way to prevent all those attacks. The only other grant type defined is the client credentials grant type, which is of course the grant type that does not involve a end user in front of a computer. There's a handful of other requirements that are essentially in the security best current practice and the other ECPs, things like requiring exact redirect URL matching to drop any wildcard matching, so dropping query string usage of bearer tokens, there's some additional requirements around refresh tokens, which again are from the security VCP. And probably most significantly, the two grant types from the core are no longer here, which are the implicit and password grants. And these are, again, this is not anything that OAuth 2.1 is deciding. This is based on the security best current practice, also saying to not use those grants in OAuth 2. So one of the other big changes in OAuth 2.1 is I shouldn't say changes, but there's a new term introduced in OAuth 2.1, which is called a credentialed client. So OAuth 2 defines public and confidential clients, and then throughout the document, there is a sprinkling of exceptions to these definitions used throughout the document. So the idea is that we're going to actually give those exceptions a name, and that's credentialed. So a credentialed client is a client that has credentials, but whose identity is not confirmed. So for example, probably the most straightforward way to imagine this is a client that uses dynamic client registration and then gets a client secret through that dynamic client registration. And specifically where the dynamic client registration was not authenticated itself. So if you imagine a mobile app shipped in the Apple App Store, it obviously cannot be shipped with the client secret included. So the first thing you could do when it wakes up is use dynamic client registration to get a client secret. However, that API call to the registration endpoint is an unauthenticated API call, so its identity isn't actually confirmed. And yet it has a client secret, which it still can use in many ways that are mentioned in the draft to prevent certain attacks. So this is that sort of halfway between public client and confidential client. It's not a confidential client because its identity is not confirmed, but it's not quite a public client because public client has other implications. Anyway, this is mainly just to say that this distinction has existed in OAuth 2 from the beginning. And it looks like I lost my slide that has a quote showing the differences in the specs by being able to use this term. Essentially, it just sort of cleans up the terminology it cleans up the language in the spec to be a little bit less dancing around like, oh, if it's confidential client, or if it also happens to have a client secret, but it's not confidential, now we can just call it a credentialed client. So what's next for this? There's still some editorial cleanup that needs to happen. I'm sure there's a lot of copy editing to do. I think it's a good idea to also take this opportunity to clean up the language used in the draft and look for anything in OAuth 2 that was not necessarily clear, and we have a chance to update it now to make it easier to read. I do need to add examples of credentialed clients because the other client types already have examples in here. So that's been one of the pieces of feedback we've received is people don't quite understand credentialed client just reading this short description. And of course, getting feedback from the group. So that is what we are here to do right now. So that is the status, and I'm happy to open it up for questions or discussions.
Yeah, if you have any comments, questions, please line up on the chat there.
And please, if you are not speaking, please mute your microphone.
Yes, please do that. Mike, go ahead.
Yes, reaching back a decade, there was a change made in 749 during OAuth 48, where Dick and I didn't understand some language that Aaron had written, and we got it wrong. There was an error filed correcting the meanings to what Aaron had intended. I would look up the errata on 6749 and get that fix in. I mean, that was by no means the only piece of ambiguous language, but that one was so bad Dick and I didn't understand it as we were doing OAUTH 48.
Great,
Okay.
thanks. I think I've found that now.
Okay, Roman, go ahead.
Just riffing off of exactly what Mike was talking about, I haven't checked yet, but I mean, this seems like a good opportunity to address any of the errata we may have outstanding on the reference documents that are going to be pulled in.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Might be a short meeting then. So, if nobody has any comments right now, can we get some volunteers to read the document and provide feedback? We just don't want to leave it wide open and wait for people. Any volunteers? Go ahead, Justin. Or sorry, Vittorio.
Vittorio was first. Go ahead.
Yeah, Vittorio.
All right, sorry. Just two things. One was that we had a discussion about the must for the sender constraint for refresh tokens. And I think that the conclusion was that we wanted must just for single page apps, but that for mobile apps, native apps, we were okay with should. Aaron?
Not sure how I got muted there, sorry. I believe that matches my memory as well. Do you remember where that discussion was? Was that at the security workshop?
No, we had a thread with Thorsten and Brian Campbell.
Got it. Yes, I remember that now.
Because we made this statement at the last time that we had these interim meetings, and then you guys followed up for knowing more details. So it was one. And then I have another one, but I'll let Justin go, and I put myself again in queue for the next one.
Okay, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so I'd like to see more discussion in this. Well, one, I'll volunteer to review the spec text. I've read through it, but not deeply enough to have a full set of comments yet.
Awesome, thanks.
And granted, this is the -00, so we've got a ways to go yet. I would like to see more discussion in this about non-bearer token types. I know Depop is still very, very young, but we at least have the MTLS RFC, which seems to be mentioned only in passing or in context of client authentication in the current draft. I would like to see that. And the notion of sender constraining access tokens to be brought more to a light here. And the other main comment I have, I mean, overall, I think this is good work. But the other main comment I have is that there seems to be a lot of leaning on OpenID Connect. And I think we just need to be careful that this doesn't accidentally step into OpenID territory. I don't think it quite does, but it gets close in some places. So it's just something that I'll be on the lookout for in my review, and I request the editors keep an eye towards that going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. Can I ask if there was a particular instance that you are referencing, or just sort of general comment?
There was, but I can't find it now. I've got the document up in the back. Okay. I noticed it as I read through, and I'm not finding it.
The one reference that is actually normative is the exception that allows OpenID Connect clients to not use Pixie. That
might have been
quite a
it.
bit of discussion that got into that, but we've tried to reword that in this draft compared to some of the earlier iterations of it to make it very specific that this is not trying to say you should be doing OpenID Connect things. It's saying if you are doing OpenID Connect things, then you don't need to do Pixie.
Right. Now I remember that discussion on the list, and I'm trying to find it in the document. Yeah, I'm fine with the reference to I'm fine with the reference to the nonce thing being included here. Yeah, unfortunately, just scanning through the document in the background right now, I can't find the line, but still the general sentiment and suggestion still applies.
Yeah.
So
I'll definitely keep that in mind.
All right, thank you. I'll let you know if I find that again. I may have also just misread or misunderstood something because the places that I'm reading that say OpenID don't seem to be a problem right now. So we'll see.
Okay, Vittorio. Thanks, Justin. Vittorio.
All right. So I'm a bit reluctant to bring this up again but given that there is not a huge queue, I think that I'm not stealing anyone's time. Some time ago, we had a discussion about the fact that the deprecation of the implicit flow has implications on some of the OpenID Connect flows. In particular, I'm thinking of a case in which there is a response type ID token, and the response mode is form post, which is a scenario which doesn't have any of the drawbacks that we have and the reason for which implicit was deprecated. And the problem I'm having is that, as I predicted, whenever people see that flow, they say, okay, that flow is going to go away anyway because implicit is deprecated, which instead isn't the case. Let's say that that particular deprecation is for all the various considerations we had about having a token in the referral header, or like all the various issues that we have in tokens in the URL in general. So I don't know if it's the place in this spec to make a clarification in there that that particular way of issuing tokens from the authorization endpoint is not affected by the various security reasons that made us deprecate. And I bring this up again. I know that we already discussed this and we got to a position in which we were okay, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to have worked. Let's say that people do keep getting this wrong. And I bring this up because given that in the nonce, we actually called out a particular scenario that occurs in OpenID, I'm wondering if there is something that we can do in here to preempt and clarify that point so that I don't have to spend the next 5 years every time someone says, here implicit is deprecated, to explain that that deprecation doesn't really affect the form post.
Okay.
That makes sense. Can I
go ahead.
just clarify one thing real quick before we get to the queue? So while effectively this means the implicit flow is deprecated, what's actually happening in this draft is that it's not being defined, which is different. So the security BCP actually says things like, don't use the password grant. It's just not in this draft. So while I totally get your point, there isn't anything in this draft that actually says it's deprecated. So that is that sentiment is coming from sort of the outside of the spec, the things that we're talking about external to the spec. So I just wanted to clarify that. But let's go ahead and go to the queue.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So I know Tony has a comment here, but Justin and Mike, did you jump into the mic to reply to Vittorio or discuss that topic or what? Or is something completely different?
Well, I did. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
So sorry, Justin, you were first. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize. I didn't get in line to respond to Vittorio, but I would like to.
Okay. So if that, like, go ahead. Because
Okay.
Tom had different comments. I don't want to.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's fine. I'll do my response to Vittorio and then put me back in the mic line after.
Okay.
So yeah, I totally get understanding the whole notion of just not mentioning implicit and password and things like that in here in the definitions. From the perspective of the developer, though, I think that Vittorio's got a really good point that people are going to look at this document and see that this is one of the things that is, potentially extensible, defining new grant types, and therefore wonder kind of, okay, so this is defined here. What does that mean about using it and stuff like that? So I think a discussion maybe in section 12 that gets more into it. We mention it that it's omitted, but we don't, and we have the reference to security topics, which is good, but I think a little bit more about, maybe to Vittorio's point of the implicit grant on its own or something, I'm not sure how to phrase that, would be helpful
Okay.
here. I do agree with the editor's take of omitting its definition and not defining it and then saying don't use it.
Okay. Mike, are you following up on that?
Yeah, I want to support Vittorio's notion that we should find a way, and I don't know if it's in this draft.
Oh, sorry, guys, go mute if you're not speaking. So please. Go ahead, Mike.
I wanted to support Vittorio. The working group should find a way to say that implicit with form post is not dangerous in the way it is. I don't know if that's in this draft or blog post we make or something, but I agree that developers are being caused confusion about implicit with form post being in the same category as implicit in the fragment, not at all the same.
Yeah.
So I don't know what we want to do, but we need to do something.
Yeah, I don't think a blog post would address this, right? It will get lost. So we need. It seems that we need to do something about this in the draft. So,
I would. Can I respond to these couple things? I think Justin's point is good that there could be some more discussion of this, and I think one of the things that could be clarified in this without stepping too far into either OpenID Connect or redefining implicit is that also as a guidance for future extensions is that the actual problem with the implicit flow is that the access tokens are issued from the authorization endpoint rather than the token endpoint. And that then doesn't discount response type ID token because that's not an access token, right? So if OAuth actually makes a statement that says, don't issue access tokens from the authorization endpoint, then that's the thing that's the goal there would be to clarify that that's the reason the implicit flow is being omitted, is that the implicit flows access tokens come from the authorization endpoint. And maybe that's a way to make it more clear that response type ID token with whatever response modes are totally, a different issue because they're not access tokens that don't have the same threat model.
Okay. Dick, do you have a comment about the same topic?
Yeah.
Okay,
I just wanted to float out the idea of rather than having normative language to go and describe these things in security considerations, to sort of describe what the risks are and when there isn't risk, so that people understand when they could use it and not use it, but not have it as normative language.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, to Aaron's comments, Yeah, response type equals ID token matters, but the one that we're really talking about is ID token token, where there is a access token issued from the authorization endpoint, but we use form post, it's put in the body, it's not put in the fragment. And so the ways that you can steal it when it's in the fragment and in the URL in particular don't apply.
That's true, but you still have the problem of lack of confirmation that it's been received by the client.
What do you mean?
I mean, the authorization server has no guarantee that the client actually got the access token, whereas giving it in response to a post request from at the token endpoint, the delivery is in the response to that request. So it is a confirmed delivery.
You could tell that it was delivered if it's later used. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at.
Right, but it's used at the resource server, not at the authorization server. So the authorization server can't guarantee it was received. Only the resource server can later tell the authorization server that it was successful because it showed up.
I don't see that as being a security issue. That's an end-to-end completion issue, but that's not a security issue.
That's an interesting distinction. I see it as a security issue because the lack of confirmation of delivery, if you can confirm it was delivered to the right client, then there's higher assurance overall in like the policies of that token or the lifetime of it or the lifetime of chain, tokens around it, like the refresh tokens or other access tokens. If you can't confirm it was received, you don't get that assurance and you can't make the same decisions because you're working with less information.
Sure, but again, this doesn't facilitate an attack. We can take this on list if you want, but the high order bit here is I support Vittorio's point, and maybe you can put this on list, that we need to make an affirmative statement that implicit with form post does not have the same security problems as implicit. We do not in the marketplace want to get people to stop doing things that are actually working well and okay.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Justin?
Yeah, so this is actually taking a step back from the specifics of this issue, and something that the document doesn't quite tackle yet, but I think it really needs to, is the notion of what compatibility means here for OAuth 2.1. Do we expect an OAuth 2.1 client to be able to talk to a 2.0 server? Do we expect a 2.0 client to be able to talk to a 2.1 server, or under which circumstances? Obviously, OAuth does not guarantee compatibility between OAuth 2.0 and OAuth 2.0, so we're already constrained by that space. But in a very real sense, and this gets back to some of the questions that Vittorio and Mike are raising here, I think we need to be clearer about what we mean by the additional constraints in 2.1. Are we guiding people towards better auth servers or better clients or both? And what does that mean when talking to legacy systems? The bit of text, and I understand that this is imported from the Pixie draft, but the bit of text that really makes me really brings this up is in section 4112, the discussion of the plain transformation. I remember when we decided to keep that in the Pixie document, because Google had already done that, and then somebody came up with a much better way, much more secure way to do it. So, you know, in addition to having Pixie, would it be reasonable to deprecate this also, or to reevaluate what compatibility with, for example, Pixie means here?
Dick Hart as note taker. Justin, what were you comparing the Pixie to? What was the feature?
Oh, it's the plain transformation for the code challenge.
Thank you.
That's an interesting point, Justin. I guess my editor response is, have there been any studies on or any research on attacks using the plain code transformation, and are they documented in the security BCP? Because if this document is going to leave it out, then it should have already been taken out by another document that predates this one, right? So the security BCP is the obvious place for that, that's where a lot of these similar restrictions are coming from, similar constraints. And if it's not a good idea to use this anymore, we should make that clear in the security BCP that it's also not okay for OAuth 2 clients to be using it.
Okay, that's reasonable. The specifics of Pixie aside, I do think that we need to have more explicit discussion about what compatibility means, or even what aim is between 2.1 and 2.0. This has been brought up on the list a couple of times, and back when we could all sit in the same room together, I remember this was another very real topic of conversation.
Justin, it's Dick Hart here. Just maybe you can drive more clarification on that. I mean, we were trying to frame 2.1 as being the best practices of OAuth 2.0 and accumulation of all existing documents. So it's compatible with what's out there today. It's just put together in one document. What are you suggesting we change, or do you think that it isn't compatible in some way?
Oh, it's not compatible because it says don't use the implicit flow. It says, or it doesn't say how to use the implicit flow. There's a bunch of things that are defined and you can do in the world of OAuth 2.0 that our best practices documents say don't do. But that makes people who are implementing just raw OAuth 2.0 strictly incompatible with OAuth 2.1, which includes all the best practices that say don't do the bad things.
Right. So my statement was that the world today is that you know here's what you should do, right? And so
I understand.
that was changed. What 2.0 you shouldn't just implement 2.0. You should implement 2.0 with best practices, which is what 2.1 is. We just call that out more.
I think that needs to be more explicitly defined because I think it's going to get towards some of the concerns that Vittorio and Mike have raised, vis-a-vis confusion about the nature of the document and deprecation of elements. I think Aaron was trying to break that.
Yeah, there's a section in the draft called Differences from OAuth 2, and it sort of goes through these major differences. And I think that you're right that it needs a little bit more context about that. And I don't think it's I do think the goals that we're coming at are correct still, and I don't want to change that. But I think you're right that just sort of backing that up with a little bit of context and just explaining what essentially what Dick was saying, that yes, if you are building OAuth 2 and following best practices, that is what this document is. And I think that could probably be clarified with a new intro paragraph to that section 12.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be appropriate, and I think you know, massaging the intro text to the document itself can also help. I think framing it in terms of providing context is the right way to look at it. So basically, somebody picking up 2.1, you know, kind of knows what to expect.
Right. Well, maybe Justin, when you review the document, you could make some suggested text changes.
That is an action I could take.
Right. Okay. Great discussion. Any other comments about this topic?
Can we ask to see if anybody else can volunteer to review it?
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. So anybody else? So in addition to Justin, can we get one or two more people? Mike, thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Vittorio, did you sign up? Justin is signing you up, I guess. Vittorio, still there? Oh, okay. Will you be able to review the document? Thank you. Okay, awesome. Perfect. Good. Okay, thank you, guys. That great discussion. Okay, any other comments about this topic before I'm going back to Tony's question? Okay, awesome. So Tony, do you want to speak up here or?
Yeah, there's an obsolete clause in the document that I read, but I'm trying to discern the difference between there's a difference between obsolete and deprecate. And so I'm trying to understand what the meaning of the obsolete was. Was it that it's completely gone, or in the deprecate case, is it still in use and future may go away? So I'm trying to discern what was meant in that clause.
Sure, Tony. I just took the language that was in 6749, which said that it is obsoleted 1.0. That's as much thought as I put into it.
Yeah, so yeah, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand what the intent, is the intent to say, 6749 will still remain there until it goes away at some point in time? Or is it meant that this is going to totally obsolete it, which will mean that it's no longer in practice? Which would impact some of the implementations out there. So that's my concern.
I'm not quite sure I understand the process implications here, but the goal, at least from my end, is people should look at 6749 and be able to see, oh, I don't need to read this. I should go read this other thing instead because it's a better starting point. What that means as far as the words to use, I'm not totally sure, but we can hear from.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Roman. Let me jump in kind of from a process perspective on that. So we didn't actually include the right metadata yet in the 2.1 document, but generally speaking, what obsolete means is obsolete relative to something else is that whatever is that document that's doing the obsoleting is considered the thing that the IETF is recommending. It doesn't necessarily make any statement that the thing that preceded it is going away. But this document that is doing the obsoleting is the thing we're saying that is the thing that we're working on, and I dare say the thing that we're recommending. I think a really strong example of this is we have TLS version 1.3 and TLS version 1.2. Technically 1.3 is obsoleting version 1.2, but I think no one would say that TLS 1.2 is going away. If that helps.
Yeah, that makes
that helps.
perfect.
So
perfect sense, except I don't think people understand that clarification that's
right.
in there today. And I think people would need to understand that clarification.
Yeah.
Also, what does that mean in the context of all the other documents that 2.1 moves into? Are they all going to be obsoleted or just 67.1?
Again, Roman jumping in here on top of everyone, I think that's something we would need to be very precise with regards to the metadata when we say what we're obsoleting, because right now, only in words, we're just saying it obsoletes, but with the metadata as it relates to the RFC series, we actually have not done anything, and we would need more precision there. Because likely we have to cite other documents, I would think.
Who was it that spoke just prior to Roman?
Yeah, this is Roman speaking. I'm SEC area.
Apologies, before that was Philip Skokan, out 0.
It was who?
Philip.
Okay, thank you. I know your voice, Roman.
Okay. Anybody else has any comments about this? Any thoughts? So Roman, I think Tony had a question also about the difference between obsolete and deprecated. Is there a difference between those two, and are they both being used?
In the RFC series, and again, I keep using this word metadata, it's the thing that's in the upper left-hand corner on the first page. There is no construct called deprecated. What we do have is the notion of moving a document to historic status, but I don't think that would at all be appropriate here, because historic typically means this is stuff not being used in the world.
Right.
And that's, again, to repeat, that's absolutely not what we're talking about here.
No, absolutely not. Okay. Yeah, I think Tony's point is that not many people understand the meaning of obsolete the way you describe it, and there will be some confusion there. So it'll be interesting to think about how to really make it clear.
I would agree with you. I mean, that's a lot of IETF RFC series arcane kind of stuff. I believe there was a suggestion, I forgot who made it kind of earlier, that we're going to need to tune the language in the abstract to make some very clear, real natural language kind of statements about what is the relationship to this, to the BCP, to 2.0. And I would strongly endorse that. I think we need that level of clarity here.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, thanks, Tim. But yeah, it's a bigger one, but we are facing it right now. So, okay. Anybody else has any comments, questions about this topic? Yeah, thanks, Tim. Anybody else? Any comments? Okay. Any other topic that you want to discuss? Okay. Well, that was a really good discussion and interesting. I guess if no other topics to discuss, I think we will end it here and hope to see you all next week for another meeting next week. Yeah, same time. Okay.
I ask a question before we dismiss?
Go ahead, Mike. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Don't drop. Go ahead, Mike.
And maybe this was discussed in the first couple of minutes, which I missed, but Nat Sakamura submitted draft 26 of the OAUTH spec, which addressed Ben Kadek's AD review comments.
Yeah.
Is this being sent back to the IESG now, or what's the status?
I think it is, or we did discuss this quickly. It is with IESG. It was never back with the working group. So maybe Roman, you wanna take this from here? Oh, did Roman drop? I guess he did drop. So we did talk about this, Mike. Now that document is still with the IESG, if I remember correctly. Let me check it very quickly here. I don't think we pulled it into the working group, back into the working group. So it is with the ISG. Let me see. Yeah, it's ISG evaluation. So and Roman,
Okay, wait.
Go ahead.
We probably need to wake up the ISG and say, please finish and get it on another telechat.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if Harris want to do that or what.
Yeah, well, Roman confirmed that he's aware of this and he will address this, right?
Okay.
Just before you join. Okay, awesome. Anybody else has any last minute comment? Okay, thank you all. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.